Good evening, everyone. Welcome you back to one of our new episodes. And this time around, we will be covering a very significant personality when it comes to reviewing the history of India, um, referring to the Mughal dynasty. And it starts with Babur, then in terms of administration and its glory days, we refer to Akbar, and then we land to Aurangzeb, who lived in a period between 1618 to 1707. Then we land to Aurangzeb, and then it is a mystery, uh, a personality which is very difficult to gauge, equally difficult to summarize this uh, personality uh, in 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 analytical form uh, when you are analyzing, and it is because he is truly one puzzle that no matter how deep you go into it, it keeps you engaged and it keeps surprising you. So, before we commence, the legend has it that he is someone who was driven by emotions and cruelty, intolerance, and someone who uh, served as a catalyst to the demise of Mughal Empire. All right, these are all debatable things which we will unearth through this small session that we will have. So let's start with what we are seeking here, Aurangzeb. So I couldn't find a better thing than this. Something which happened in 1633. He was 15 years old, and what he did somehow explains how he lived. And you can see a horseman charging toward an elephant, which is uh, right there face to face, and you see it's a stampede, it's a panic. So what is this episode? That's when his father Shah Jahan, his brothers Dara Shiko, Murad, and they were all witnessing uh, traditional elephant show, uh, war elephant, when one of them went rogue and it charged toward royal camp, and this 15-year-old picked up uh, his spear and went straight head on with the elephant and brought it down. So it was nothing less than a legend what happened. And 15 years old, you're hardly uh, capable of thinking, but this showed that he was there. He saw himself as someone who was destined to lead, and he will explain his act in this manner. If the fight had ended fatally for me, it would have it would not have been a matter of shame. That drops the curtain even on emperors. It is no dishonor. The shame lay in what my brothers did. And of course, none of them, even Darashiko being elder, or the emperor himself, Shah Jahan, no one came forward and rather went for the retreat, not Aurangzeb. That wasn't his style. So, uh, toward his ambition, toward his self belief, nothing could be better than this. So, let's move forward. And we definitely see that it's the East India Company which runs parallel, and post getting concessions at the start of the 17th century, They outpaced Portuguese, every other competitor, French, Dutch, and then it seems that the Moguls were incapable of handling them. But right in front of you, the man looking down upon the kneeling person is Aurangzeb. And when his might was challenged by the East India Company, and this is almost close to a century when they had settled in the port cities, he took them head on. And this portrait depicts Josiah Child, who was the representative of the East India Company or the British Crown for the region, and he is kneeling in front of Aurangzeb seeking pardon. As the words from the history says, for a massive indemnity and promises of better conduct in the future, he graciously agreed to the restoration of the East India Company's trading privileges and the withdrawal of his troops. And there was no way, even if it was a European power, that could subdue Aurangzeb or his desires or his mindset. So this is what we are up against. So ambition, glory, as his name would say, Alamgir, the conqueror. Unlike Shah Jahan, his father, which was the king of the world, he saw himself as the conqueror. And the conqueror is who fights his way, conquers. So that's what was the mindset. Uh, if you see his legacy, so over and above, he was the one who took the empire to its greatest length, as you can see in this map. Uh, this strategic, the richest regions which drove the entire Mughal uh, empire's might in terms of monetary benefit. That is all credit to Aurangzeb, Alamgir. That's what he did, and they surpassed the King dynasty. China is the largest manufacturer and producers in the world. Like they were, as per some estimates, they were contributing some 25% of the global GDP, which was more than any other region or individual entity at that time. And uh, then comes his tyranny, which is very famous. So you see, uh, it's a very strange relation. I'm trying to be as modest as I can be. So uh, Alamgir saw himself and his brother taken hostage by whom? His grandfather. Yeah. And why? Because his father Shah Jahan rebelled in sometime around 1626 against his father Jahangir, and to teach his son a lesson, both of his sons, eldest son, were taken hostage and kept as a guarantee for peace till Jahangir passed away and Shah Jahan became the king. And the same was the fate. He has grown like that. And when his father Shah Jahan, he sided with his elder brother Dara Shikoh, Aurangzeb had, as the initial slide said, the conqueror. There was no stopping of him. He couldn't have remained as a loyal brother. That wasn't his league. So he sided, made alliances, and divided Dara Shikoh's strength. And finally, in 1658, he defeated him. And as you can see from the timelines, this very interesting. Jar was the binding force, his sister, and there's a very interesting episode. In 1644, if I'm right, there was an accident within the palace where accidentally she caught fire and got she burnt herself pretty bad. And Shah Jahan, totally dependent on Jahan Ara for the family matters, was heartbroken when he personally, as per some account, attended Jahan Ara while she was not well and everybody cuddled around. However, Aurangzeb was at warfront and he came after 3 weeks, upon which his father was so furious that he relieved of all the commands. And for almost a year or so, he was someone who was nowhere. And that was a real wedge between them. And this remained till he defeated Dara Shikoh. He went on a trial, and very interestingly, the religion came into play because amongst many accusations, one was that he was not a practicing Muslim, and there was a vague religious observation by Dara Shikoh, and for that he was executed. And his head was sent to the father Shah Jahan of his favorite son by Aurangzeb once he was executed, and he kept post 1658 when he defeated Dara Shikoh. He kept his father a prisoner, and he was only left with his daughter Jahara to take care of her. That's what it was. And then you see Shuja, his brother, he was also uh, he was not spared. You see the timeline 1659, 1660, and then we see Murad in 1661. And it was Murad who went on a trial for killing uh, one of the uh, companions of Aurangzeb during that war of succession, and for that it is believed he instigated the case against his brother, which led to his execution. While it was like that's what he was born into, what he saw, that it was the survival of the fittest. There's no debate regarding this succession thing, although in this case it was pretty different, because Shah Jahan in his life has sided with Dara Shikoh as the rightful high throne, and they, Aurangzeb and Dara had a long track record of not being able to get along well, and there were many episodes where, like the case of Bijapur, which was unscalable and he conquered. However, just at the eve of the victory, it was taken away as Shah Jahan preferred a peace deal, and that left Aurangzeb devastated. He always blamed his brother Dara Shikoh for doing this to him. And then in Deccan, he was placed, because of very hard terrain, a struggling province, but along with his commitment and his vision, he turned it into a hub of revenue. That's what he did. So he lived by these rules. So yeah, religion is something which haunts Aurangzeb all along the way, and there is no denial. You see, uh, one of his book is what is called Fatwa Alamgiri. So the first time a coded constitution law paper was uh, furnished by Aurangzeb, derived from the spirit of Islam as per his interpretation, and it was drafted by almost 500 experts of the religion at that time, even from across India, from the birthplace of Islam. Uh, it is said that half of the jurists were from there, and it was furnished to regulate all the matters. It's a very different, a very uh, extended rules and regulation book derived from the religion, and there are still certain highlights. The person made in charge as a chairman to undertake this thing was Sheikh Nizam by Aurangzeb. It has been translated into 30 languages, and some believe till early 20th century it was used as a benchmark to treat or draft laws for Muslim, even when they were under imperial occupation, these regions, and its main primary features. In itself, it's a complete chapter when we take it. However, I'll just tell you, it is shifting between extremities and moderation. Like uh, when the text was revived on the non-Muslims, which is called jizya, after almost 100 years, so that definitely hit a lot of the native population, which was Hindus. However, the religious sect, which is the Brahmin, the disabled, and those who were not well enough, they were relieved of any taxes under this, and based on that, you see a balance. However, there were certain things like for doing business and trade, the ratio of taxation for Muslim was less than that on a Hindu merchant. Like it was 5% for the Hindu merchant, 2.5% for the Muslim. So discrimination was there. However, as per an analysis into uh, his legacy, or his legacy toward religion, is when it is said he suppressed, he was totally non-tolerant towards Hindu sects. So it's popularly said that he destroyed less temples and built more. As per some accounts, it's somewhere around 15 temples that were broken by him. If you ask my opinion, he dealt religion as a real politic as well. And when he saw religion as the force which could threaten the divinity, the kingship that they enjoyed the Mughals, so he used it as a weapon to gather the strength around himself with reference to Muslims. And when it comes to Hindus or Sikhs, wherever he saw it as something which was challenging his rule or becoming a threat, like uh, as per uh, many accounts given for the destruction of Sikh gurdwaras and temples, it it was believed that they were somehow giving patronage to the rebels, the Jat Marathas. But similarly, at the same time, you see the highest number of non-Muslims employed in any Mughal court belong to Aurangzeb. As per, I hope I get the stats right. It was a very 31.6% Hindus, almost double than his predecessors. They were employed under Aurangzeb's court. So, as I said, to him, religion was another tool of exerting or pursuing his vision of the conqueror, the conquest, and he was someone who was trained in military, and administration and of course Islamic law, but he saw himself as a man who was pretty close to a battlefield. Very many heroics. Just quote some for you, like the in Bijapur in 1688, while his son was there undertaking an expedition. They were not successful for 8 months. He went personally and stood there and led from the front and was able to uh, get hold of that entire city. And once it has been conquered, he signed a peace deal, and there was a peaceful surrender, no bloodshed. Similarly, there were other expeditions which were totally. For instance, the Anglo-Mughal War period, and then prior to that, we have, in terms of Portuguese, he challenged them. He was very tough on them, but seems like uh, it it was it was a it was a reign which was marred by threats, and an emperor who was on the battlefield for nearly half of his life, mitigating those threats. That's how his reign will be remembered. But it was a formidable force, the strongest Mughal army, the navy, and it was absolutely in Anglo-Dutch War. This shows one of the attacks with they captured Chittagong, mighty naval power, and then towards his other attributes, it's emotions which which ran through most of his period, and he was totally devoted to a mindset that it is the conquest that belongs to him, and he was always in pursuit of the glory. There is no denial to it, and so it continues his heroics on the battlefield. There was no running away from that. That's a known fact. And his war machine that was always on the move, always battle hardened, ready. And here you'll see in towards 1700 where he had taken the Mughal Empire, and look at the colonial possessions. Hardly anything. And that's something very important. That's where he left. So there's no way. It is the apart from the internal rift which was broiling, because his interpretation of religion did lead to that final push which was there. Uh, in the previous lecture, we have also mentioned Muslims being a minority, and Mughals themselves, not the native of the land, that put them at a very hostile grounds. There is the majority that had the power in its hand, and there was no denial to it. That was the Hindus. So secularism was the administrative or political pill that was given to keep them close to uh, close to unity and avoiding any ill feeling. That is what Aurangzeb actually rattled. However, he was on a rope where his own strength could only be derived through division. There was no denial, because it was such a turmoil, because he required that sphere of influence, as I could say, around him, and that could only be guaranteed through very selective interpretation of religion that was done to keep that sphere intact while making enemies all around. And that's what it was going through. There was no denial of it. And they have seen that when the secularism was at its peak, it also could expel because the opposition was always there. They started from a very weak ground, like the tribal, the ethnic, these sort of bondings which the Mughals didn't have. And for that, it was continuous evolution that they were practicing. It was, I can say, for Yemen, it is said controlling Yemen is like dancing on the head of the snakes, and the Mughals had no different scenario in front of them. So that's his entire entire sum up, if you ask how it was. But then, in terms of his personal attribute, he was matchless. Absolutely. When we talk about personal heroics, attributes, skills, he will remain as one of the top one. I believe why they say the decline came because post Aurangzeb Alamgir, because he set the bar too high for a king. Then that was totally uh, impossible for the others to maintain. That wasn't the case there. So very interestingly, like how he summed up his life to his son, and I'll say, I came alone and I go as a stranger. I do not know who I am nor what I have been doing. Why I like this sum up because that's what it is when you study Aurangzeb. That's why I said it's a puzzle, very different to interpret, very difficult to interpret. And still, what his legacy is, the founder of India, Gandhi, I borrow his words, there was greater degree of freedom under Mughal rule than the British rule. In Aurangzeb time, a Shivaji could flourish, has 150 years of British rule produced any Pratap or Shivaji. So that's a testimony how he was a person who was truly seen as someone who had eliminated, or he had gone after the religion, but the popular phrase is it's less temple that he destroyed and more that he built. That's how he would be.